We were spoiled for choice in April due to how many great games there were, but here are some smaller titles you might have missed, beginning with Mr. Sun's Hatbox, one of the more unique titles that I have come across in recent memory that is pretty cleverly designed, being more like MGS5, which I hope will pique your interest. Yes, indeed, you have the ability to Fulton or capture enemies back to your base, essentially recruiting them so that they can participate in your next heist. Yep, in addition to the recruitment feature, the core gameplay loop is fascinating, where the mission structure is amazing, and this is criminally underrated all things considered, so right or wrong by picking this up. We also had the 1.0 release of Lone Fungus, the self-styled mushroom Metroidvania that is doing decently for this solo developer, where the relatively simple visuals do hide a well-made game. Honestly, it doesn't blow me away with the visuals, where, love it or hate it, you can see the Hollow Knight influence here as well, although the developer does not straight up copy the vibe and is worth a mention because of that. Combat is okay, but to me, the more interesting part is the tricky traversal, where there are quite a number of platforming challenges. Funnily enough, this developer is already working on their next title in another mushroom Metroidvania that will be more like Castlevania rather than Hollow Knight, so certainly colour me intrigued. I like to feature unique games in a video like this, which is why Dance of Cards makes the cut, a pixel art gambling RPG which is not something that you see every day. This is a death game title where you have to gamble in various games to try to stay alive, where you can forge alliances with the other characters and even RPG style stats and upgrades. It is heavily centered around poker, however, so if you're not into that, you may not enjoy this, but it's a unique and well-made title that is perfect for this list. If deck builders aren't your thing, I don't think that Ash of Gods The Way will convince you otherwise, but there is a twist that might still make this of interest. You are participating in various tournaments in order to defeat enemy leaders and to turn the tide of battle, where this plays out more like a turn-based tactics title, being similar to the original game in this series in Ash of Gods Redemption from 2018. However, the twist here is that this is more of a strategy puzzle game rather than any of the above mentioned genres, where you're figuring out what units to place in your deck, how to upgrade them, and how to place said units on the field to maximize your advantage. As such, it's a strange but interesting spin-off that is certainly a curiosity. Speaking of which, another title that is not as it appears on the surface is Beyond the Long Night, which bills itself as a twin-stick shooter roguelite, but do not go in expecting the Binding of Isaac, since you will be disappointed. Yes, while the run-based structure is still there, along with weapon variety and overpowered combinations, in contrast to the modern roguelite, there's no meta progression or constant upgrades like in Hades, but rather, like Spelunky, it's more about knowledge gain.
Chaos!
Speaking of which, exploration and uncovering secrets is the main draw here, with some people comparing this to Outer Wilds, so it's an atypical roguelite which is flying under the radar as a result. Another underrepresented genre in the modern age is the classic turn-based dungeon crawling roguelike, where an excellent entry is Dungeon Drafters, one that adds a deck building twist, where you're able to wield a variety of powerful spells and abilities to obliterate your enemies. Playing as one of 6 possible characters, delve into dungeons to seek out and destroy evil and forbidden spell cards from the world, where in the way are of course the usual dangerous monsters. The combat here is the highlight, where you can split the ground open, hurl fireballs, summon allies and more, combining various spells together for maximum synergy and damage. However, even if you do fall in combat, you will return to the adventurous town, where you can trade cards, buy new ones, open booster packs, talk to NPCs and start various quests, giving you a breather before your next run. The pixel art and visuals are gorgeous, with a light-hearted and comedic tone to the story and writing, so it's not all doom and gloom. being a refreshing breath of fresh air for this genre. However, despite not being an early access title, there were some reports of bugs at launch, which has perhaps dampened enthusiasm for it, but the developers have been furiously putting up patches to the point where I think it's relatively stable right now, so give it a go if it looks interesting. Similarly, a title that had its share of issues at launch is Hunt the Night, a grimdark, gothic horror top-down action-adventure title where you play as a member of an order sworn to protect the world from the night, an ethereal force that can be thought of as evil, but is set in a world where the cycle of day and night rotates naturally until some humans found a way to stop the cycle up to this point in time. From the art, setting, and even sound design, this title screams Dark Souls, or more specifically, Bloodborne, with the more cosmic horror influence, where you'll be exploring ancient cathedrals, lost cities, and more, battling a host of enemies along the way. The combat system is the highlight, where the pseudo-Souls-like stamina system forces you to get in and out of combat quickly, dipping in to attack and then dodging out of the way. Bosses are tough and challenging, requiring patience and perseverance, but this is par for the course for such a game. Surprisingly, you do have quite a number of customization options in battle, with a variety of weapons, upgrades, and builds that you can choose to focus on a particular aspect, such as lifesteal or poison. It is not all combat, having a number of puzzles as well, so you can see the Zelda influence, but for the most part, this is a combat-heavy title that is pretty good. There have indeed been quite a number of awesome roguelites last month, with another such example being Spirit's Fall, a roguelite platformer with platform fighter-inspired combat, where the variety of builds and upgrades that you can try is the main highlight. It might, however, be lacking in its own personality and story, since things are a little generic, and more than a couple of people have seen this as a direct ripoff of Hades. And while I'm not going to be that harsh, I do still think that this game needs some time to find its footing. What is excellent, however, is the various spirit animals that you can call upon and the upgrades that they bestow, where if you love combat-focused side-scrollers, I would recommend this title. Early access is planned for 4 to 8 months, with about 60+% of the content in the current version, where I'm fairly certain that this will turn out well. Grappling hooks in games, if done right, can be the defining feature of such a title, and I believe Rusted Moss qualifies for this, being a ranged combat-based Metroidvania with full 360 degrees aiming. Taking place in a world where the age of humans is ending, you play as a changeling, a fey creature that looks human, having to navigate the world and to eventually unveil her loyalties. As mentioned, the physics-based grappling is the core mechanic, where you have to use it not only while exploring, but also in battle, where getting used to and then mastering the grapple is one of the key points of this game. The Toho or Bullet Hell style boss fights are quite the challenge as well, as are some of the regular enemies, but the variety of weapons, from shotguns to sniper rifles, will certainly help with that. The exploration, however, might annoy some people, since the map isn't the best, and backtracking to find upgrades can feel a little tedious, but overall, it's a good experience with plenty to do. This title has been described as roguelite Hotline Miami, and that's not too far from the truth, being a bloody all-action top-down shooter, but with the added randomness and replayability of a roguelite, as compared to its more linear inspiration. While the monochrome color scheme with splashes of red may not be for everyone, there's just something really cool about this title, where contributing to that is the awesome soundtrack. There are plenty of weapons to choose from, which do feel unique, despite largely being all guns, with the minute-to-minute action and surprisingly intriguing backstory of Ocho is certainly worth experiencing, where you can learn more about the legacy of Hotline Miami in this video.